So, good evening, everyone. And I'll wait just a second. It looks like we're getting some folks connected to audio. Um, Although I'll just start with the introduction and then we'll roll. I'm Brian with Engage Winona, and you're welcome to the fourth of our series of these community engagement workshops, which are really just designed around this idea of giving folks an opportunity to kind of get through barriers and take next steps and get to work on community projects and really cool ideas for change, and then working with this really wealth of local experts and wisdom that we have right in our community to help folks achieve that. This is part of our lived experience leaders program. And one thing we're actually doing is primarily recording this for our leadership cohorts to learn from and to train with, and to work with in that program. So they also wanted to provide an invitation for us to open this to the community, and to provide this too for the broader community. And it's also co-sponsored by the Winona Nonprofit Alliance, of whom many folks here in this room are a part of, which is a really great organization that brings together Winona's nonprofits of all shapes and sizes to collaborate and share resources. So in a second, I'm going to introduce our panel of experts and let them take it away. Just a few things to share. Is that I mentioned the Lived Experience Leaders Program. These are exclusively diverse leaders in the Winona community who have these really beautiful and big ideas for change, especially rooted in their lived experience, and challenges they've faced in Winona. Our work is just supporting them and collaborating with them, and anytime they encounter some barriers to these really amazing ideas they have, helping them work through those, and just lead these projects into being in the community. And so as part of that, we're offering free will donations for folks who are participating in this. Totally free will, sliding scale of $5 to $15. And it's also completely free if that works for you too. And I'll put that link in the chat, but all of that money goes toward our lived experience leaders projects and the work that they're doing in the community. And then the other thing I'll mention too is that we are recording this conversation, and this is released publicly on our Facebook page and on YouTube, where we know that folks are going to engage with this after this evening. And then just as a final note, I'm here on tech support. I'll sort of fade into the background when I'm done talking, but if anybody has any issues or encounters anything, I'm here to help. So I will put the link in the chat, and at this point, turn it over to... We'll have our panel of four folks: Stacy, Nancy, Amanda, and Jeff. Just do a brief introduction. You can share your name, your background with raising money, and just a quick story based on the prompts we talked about, and then we'll kind of launch into our conversation for tonight. So maybe Stacy, I'll turn it over to you to start, and then you can choose another member of the esteemed panel and then popcorn from there.
Of course I can start, Brian. So I wrote down everything you asked of us. So my name is Stacy Shones, and I'm the development coordinator at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. I'm probably been fundraising for 6-7 years. Before I was with Hiawatha, I was also with a nonprofit in Rochester, Minnesota. And a quick story, a surprise success story of mine is when I started at Hiawatha, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, I started the development program from scratch. I was the first person to come in and start development. And so one of my big success stories is in the midst of the pandemic last year, we raised 60% more for donations and fundraising for the year, which is a huge success for us at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and go next?
Jeff McSweeney, Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters. I started off my fund development life in the year 2000, working for a small liberal arts college in Eureka, Illinois, where I graduated from. Been in part of nonprofits and fundraising, marketing, and all that for most of the past 20 years. So I think my greatest success was my last role was eliminating the debt of $100,000 at Maple Tainer Theater in Menominee within a year. So it's getting the message out and just building confidence that what the future brings and how important it is for the funds to move the organization forward. And I pop off to Nancy, my favorite person, who's given me like 10 board member recommendations that have just panned out so perfectly. Nancy.
I'm glad to hear that. So my name's Nancy Brown, and I am the president CEO of the Winona Community Foundation. And I bring to this conversation, I don't know, maybe 25 years of fundraising experience or fundraising nonprofit experience. And my favorite gift was when I was at the Winona Health Foundation. We had been receiving a $5 gift from a person just consistently, this beautiful little gift that came in all the time. And I decided to call and say thank you to this individual, and found out that she was in her 90s. And I asked her what motivated her philanthropy. And a very long story short, we wound up doing an article on her. Her name is Pearl Prudell. And this is the sad but joyful part of it, is that when Pearl passed, she had left a beautiful gift to the Winona Health Foundation in her will. And when you looked at the will document, she had changed it about 2 weeks after we had done the interview with her. So when you talk and share your gratitudes, beautiful things can happen. So Amanda.
Thank you, Nancy. Your stories always give me goosebumps. That's such a sweet one. I'm Amanda Headland. I'm the executive director of Habitat for Humanity here in Winona. I've been a professional fundraiser for 15 years, starting right after college. I started as a very entry-level development professional, processing gifts and sending out thank you letters, moving into running employee giving campaigns, managing direct mail and more print fundraising, and then from there into grants and major gifts. So over the course of time, my experience has really covered the gamut. And one of my favorite fundraising stories, well, I mean, there are several, but a fun one took place just this December, when a man I had never heard of before gave me a call and said, "Hey, I want to meet with you in your office." And I said, "Sure," because when people want to meet with me, no matter why, I just make myself available. And I went down there and he handed us a $20,000 check. And I asked him what had motivated that gift. And he said that he could see throughout the pandemic the way Habitat for Humanity was really rising to meet the needs of the community. And what that really showed me was how much of a team effort it is to raise money, that every impression you make in the community is one that can yield surprising results. And that, you know, the more people know you and the more people see what you do, the more they feel attached to your mission and want to be a part of it through their philanthropy.
Those are excellent stories. Thanks everyone for sharing those. And it's like just a cool way to I think frame this next hour or so that we're going to be together. I mean, there's just so many lessons even in those short stories about building relationships and being authentic to your mission and just sort of being yourself as you kind of live into this world of that also sometimes feels very sort of inauthentic at times of this idea of sort of asking for money for things. So what we've asked these four amazing accomplished folks to do is to each take about 10-15 minutes or so in turn, just sharing stories and experiences and tips and best practices, just simply from their own experiences. And so we'll go in order, but we have an order, but it's totally informal. And I know you can all just jump in and talk, and maybe it'll just become a conversation within 5 minutes. It's really wherever this goes. I do want to mention to the folks who are all here tonight, I really appreciate you being here, and certainly feel free to unmute and ask questions, or if it's more comfortable for you, just to pose them in the chat. I'm going to be coming off screen, but I will still be here, and then we'll be raising some of those questions and kind of keeping an eye on the chat and making sure that folks are seeing that too. So this is really intended to be interactive and a conversation, and we're really hoping that folks, if you've brought some specific situations or circumstances or challenges or just anything you're looking to kind of work through tonight, that folks are here for that too. So I think with that, I know Amanda, you had been listed as sort of first on the list, and then Stacy and Nancy, and then Jeff in the final leg. So maybe we'll start with that and just kind of see where that goes.
great, thanks. So maybe I will just talk about the importance of personal connections. And that's really where I think it all starts. Because through each of the kinds of fundraising that I have done, it's been the relationship with the people that I'm talking to, or the people that we're hoping to raise money from, that have seen it through to success. So when we were writing letters, when I was the manager of annual giving and donor relations, we really wanted the letters that we wrote to feel conversational, almost like we were stepping right out of the page and into the space with the person in their home. We wanted the letters to be real easy to read, scannable even, short sentences, things that make it feel like you're just casually talking with a friend, and that connect the reader in with the mission and the storyteller. And so that personal connection theme really played forward into all of the avenues of fundraising. I found that in grant writing, it's not a guarantee that the people reading the grant that you write will have any expertise with your subject matter. It's not a guarantee that they'll be experts or that they will even care, because people are drawn to board service, and boards are often the decision makers from all kinds of professions and all kinds of reasons for board service. And so even in something that can feel as dry as a grant application, you really want the readership to take an interest in what you're communicating. And when people are talking with you about grants, a lot of times they'll say, quantify everything. Make sure that your goals are quantifiable. Make sure that the outcomes you hope to achieve are quantifiable, that you have an evaluation process in mind so that you can show your success. Document everything and answer all the questions. But at the end of the day, there's also the really important question of, does your reader, who may have never heard of you and who may not start out caring, care at the end of reading what you've written? So how can you step through the page and make the personal connection with the person at the other end of the line of text so that they want to say yes to you and they want to see what you're doing really take off? And you can use language to make that personal connection in any context, written or personal. The personal connection was also important in crowd-rise style fundraising. When I ran an employee giving campaign for 22,000 employees in the Fairview Health System, we would have a site lead for every business unit. And they would be, really trained in making sure that they knew how to rally, inspire, and excite the people they worked with around a cause through their personal relationships. And so when people were out there asking their friends for money and their colleagues to give through the employee giving campaign, they were talking about a cause and they were talking about outcomes, but they were doing it through the context of personal relationships. And when you get into asking for larger gifts like sponsorships for a project you want to do, or major gifts to advance some larger goals or some larger campaigns, those personal relationships take on a more one-on-one context where you're sitting down across a table from somebody, forming a relationship around the mission that in this example, you probably do both start out having some care and concern about. So when I was early in my major gifts career, I had the benefit of attending a major gifts training where they talked about building those personal relationships in a really tangible way that made it very easy for me, because I am a natural introvert, and the bit about sitting down with someone that I had never met and asking them for more money than I could even fathom was like tremendously stressful. And so they helped me learn some skills about how to approach those conversations. And the first thing that they really had us do was to look at, who is it? And you can make a quick assessment. Who is it that you're talking to in this moment? And what can you understand about their personality? There are several different ways of being in the world and making decisions, and a lot of them are related to the personality that we start with. There are people out there who really like all the information and give me the facts and figures, and if it makes quantifiable sense, and if it makes business sense for me personally or for my business, then I'll be your partner in this. There are some people who really start at the emotional seat, and they want to feel all the feels about what you're doing, and they have no real linkage to the information. And if you start giving them the facts and figures, their mind will drift. They will not feel the emotional connection they need, and they will pass. But if you can win their heart while you're sitting there together, then they will be with you energetically in your corner. There are some people who are called consensus builders, and they really won't make a decision without understanding whether or not their whole team can support it. Some people will talk about giving being a family decision, and they really want to involve their spouse and maybe their kids and bring everyone who they feel is linked to the decision into the conversation. And then the last group are kind of those hard driving decision makers. They want you in, they want you out, and they want to move on to the next thing. So the best way we found, or the best way we were trained to make a successful fundraising visit was to do a quick assessment of the person you're sitting across the table from. What kind of questions are they asking me? What kind of facial responses are they making to the things that I say? How can I guess by the cues that I'm seeing how this person is going to make a decision? And then really have the conversation that your listener needs you to have. You can almost step aside from your normal practice and say, this person is clearly busy. They want me to get to it, make my case, be spunky and be gone. So I'm going to run through this proposal and then I will see ya. And that's going to be the best approach here. Or, wow, this guy is really deliberative. I'm definitely not going to tell the mushy story first. I'm going to talk about all of the things we did to make sure this was the right decision before we decided to craft the program in this way. And then I'll talk about all the ways we're going to test that, because of course I've thought that through, even though it's not in the pitch, and help him know that this is a smart business choice and one that he can be proud of being a part of. Or, I'm talking to a lady that's like my Aunt Sally, and you feel like she's giving you a hug from the minute she sees you. That's the person to tell about how this is going to change lives, build dreams, and make the future possible for the young person or for the older adult or whatever it is that you're working with that day. If you sense somebody pulling back a little bit and feeling resistant, don't push for a decision. That just means you're talking with a consensus builder. So ask the question, who else is important to you as you think about this giving decision? Is there anything you think they might value? And how can I get that to you? When would you like me to check back? And so recognize in the people that you're talking to the things that they need, and then ask yourself, how can you be their best partner in their philanthropic decision? And the way this helped me as an introvert and as someone who was intimidated by money is that it let me step outside of the whole picture and just say, I am helping this person come to a decision about a gift, and I am not actually a part of their story. I am the conduit between this person's philanthropic goals and the mission that I'm passionate about. So how can I be the best connector I can be to make both dreams come true? The last thing I'll say is that when somebody makes a gift that's a little bit of a stretch for them, there can be a real moment of catharsis. If you've ever given a gift that was a little bit too big and it maybe pinched your budget, do you kind of get goosebumps? People feel really great about the decision to make a gift that they see as transformational. And so you can trust that as you're helping someone make a gift that's transformational for them, you are giving them the incredible, powerful experience of catharsis. and that bringing a gift, no matter the size, to a successful conclusion is positive for the donor, as positive for them as it is for you. I will tell you my other favorite gift story. And Nancy, I know you've heard this one, but it just is my favorite. When I was running the employee giving campaign for Fairview and Ebenezer, I was working in a long-term care facility, and a lot of our direct care professionals were making wages probably in the $13 an hour range. Some of them were single parents with kids at home. And so we really were careful in how we asked for employee gifts, being sure to say that every gift counts. It's completely optional. We hope you will give if this is really meaningful to you, and here's what it can do when you give to the care center that I worked for. And I got a gift of paid time off, 3 hours. And so I went to enter this gift of 3 hours of paid time off into my gift entry system. And they were worth about $13 an hour. And as I looked at this person's PTO bank, they only had 7 hours. So this wonderful man had given me half of what he had. And I can tell you that to this day, that's the most generous gift I've ever received. And I am sure that when he made that gift, he felt amazing. And so I will leave it there.
That was great, Amanda. Well, piggybacking off of what Amanda said, I can provide a perspective that's a little bit different because I have started at an organization where development was a thing that didn't happen. So when I started at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center 3 years ago, and I walked in the door and I was asking all the questions like, can I see your donor list? And what are you guys doing for fundraising? And the list there were 6 names on it, 6 names on the list. And it was surprising because if you know anything about Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center, it's a huge health organization. Not only are they in Winona, they're in Goodhue, they're in Wabasha, they're in Caledonia, and they're in Rushford. And there were 6 people on the list. So I knew I had my work cut out for me. And the thing that I knew from past fundraising was you have to find the donors. Like, who are the people that know about you and are willing to contribute to your organization and your mission? And I didn't know who they were. So what my first step was I decided I need to market who we are, who Hiawatha is, because not many people knew what they were doing in the organization and the amount of services that they were offering. So what I started out doing was I come from a media background. So I reached out to all my media partners and brought them in and had them do stories on clients and what we were providing and success stories. And I reached out to media outlets in all the surrounding counties that we were in and tried to get as much publicity as possible. And then decided, after we had attended many events out in the public and talked about what we were doing, that it was time to pursue who in the community would know about us and be willing to donate to our mission. And it all fell into place from there. And we started getting more donors, and our list has definitely grown. What's so unique about our situation is not only do I look for donors within like Winona County, I'm also have to seek donors in Goodhue County and Houston County and Wabasha County. And everybody in every area is a lot different on what they're giving to and the amount that they're willing to give. So it's really unique on that side of things and looking at those side of things. And I feel like every county, you have to provide a different approach of where you're at. Winona County, I can be a lot more engaged with the individuals in Winona County. They want to come in and see what we're doing. They want to hear the stories. And it's great. Then you get into other counties such as Goodhue County, and it's not the same situation. So it takes a little bit of other work in getting everybody engaged and on board. Another situation within Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center is there's a stigma around mental health and what that means to people. And so not only are you trying to fundraise and get people to fall in love with your mission, but you're also trying to kind of take down some barriers on what people think is mental health and what we provide. So it's a really unique perspective on fundraising. You know, someday what Amanda's talking about, someday we'll be able to do a lot of that at Hiawatha, but we're just at the beginning stages of people getting to know us. But it works. It takes time, it takes effort, but I think the more that you're out there talking about your success stories, the more people get to know you, and that's what they want. You want people to know you and know what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I find it beneficial because we're in so many areas and I can't be there all the time, is to have your leadership team help with that, help with your marketing and help with the engagement, because in the long run, that's going to help your development and your fundraising. I'll share a story. We at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center, most of our individuals are in that low income poverty range, about 70% of the individuals that we serve. And it was, I want to say in 2019, we had 2 people that got married, and they decided to donate a portion of their wedding gift to Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. And it was very unique, so unique that we recognized them on our donor wall, just very dedicated to what we were doing, and they've been using our services for a very, very long time. So it was really unique. Is that a question for me?
Hi, Lisa. At least I see your hand raised. You can jump right on in if you got a question for Stacy.
Hi, more than the questions, well, I'm so thankful for here, and thank you for everybody for this presentation. My name is Lisa Morera. I am part of the Engage Winona Life Experience Leadership right now, and I really feel like, I don't know, Brian, if I can share something in my project I'm doing right now, because I feel super engaged, like she's talking about, and I feel maybe our project can be something we can maybe connect and maybe in the future. I don't know if I can share something about that.
You sure can. Yeah, if you wanted to share a bit about your project, and you're absolutely right. I think that finding connections both within this workshop and then going forward, that's exactly the point. So yeah, I'm glad you jumped in.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm not actually. I'm cooking at the same time. I'm jumping here. I am in an hour from the future right now. I was in Winona 3 weeks ago, but now I'm in North Carolina. But I'm still part of the Winona community at this moment. And my project is about how we can talk about loneliness in our community. And in this moment, my background, I'm from Cuba. I passed my last 10 years in Peru. I have a medical background, and I'm trying to jump in my medical again here in the United States. But I moved to Winona in 2019, and I started to feel before COVID how we can talk about loneliness and the disparity about loneliness in our community and in our immigrant community and minorities community. We already finished a survey. We have some data, and maybe in the future, I'm so thankful because this speech today made me idea how we can talk with people about these amazing stories we can have and connect them in the community. Thank you so much for everybody. I'm super excited to share our project in the future with our community members and our community partners. I think loneliness is a big issue right now. No more in the COVID time, but I think in all the times, and the way we can approach loneliness is really big, and we need all involved for that. It's not just a mental health, it's a social isolation as well. And thank you for this one today.
So it's my turn, I think, right? So I come from, as I said, a long career in fundraising, and I perhaps come from more of a, coming to this more from a technical aspect to help you as you are looking to raise funds for your projects and efforts. And I listened to Amanda and Stacy share just some extraordinary information, and mine's probably not as emotive, I guess. So what I wanted to do, taking Brian's feed, was top tips for fundraising. And, you know, the big question is who should you be talking to? You know, how do you know who you should be spending your time on? And the reason I say that is that your time is limited, and you want to make sure that you're directing your time with the people who are most likely going to say yes. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all going to say yes, and it might take time to get there, but that's really what you want to be able to do. So a couple of things that I would suggest, and definitely reiterate on what Stacy said, is first you need to start to show up. So if you're in this community, make sure you're showing up at things. You know, if you are able to be a guest or a member of the Chamber of Commerce, if there is a reception or an opening that you can go to, start going to those places so that you're showing your support of other organizations and what's happening in the city, and you can start to make friends and connections. And so they might not necessarily be the people that you are going to be asking for money, but you're going to get to share your story, and they might carry your story forward. I'm really fortunate in this role where I get a lot of people talking to me and talking about their stories, and I get to take them out into the world and share them and get other people excited about what they're doing. So as you start to build that list or that circle of people that you think might be willing to invest in your story, you want to start to make those, as Amanda really emphasized, those personal connections. And when you start that process, put your listening ears on, really listen to what you're hearing from those individuals. So I'm going to just kind of share an example of a visit that I recently had. And it was a visit with a couple that owns a business in town. And in that listening, what I heard is they are not from this specific community, this specific school district, but they have a strong connection to the school district that they reside in. In addition to that, they are very connected to preparing a better workforce. And so they have done some things with their favorite school district that connect students to post-secondary education options that are going to help them attract employees that are qualified. The other thing I started to hear is that they engage their employees in giving back into the community, whether that's through volunteerism or through raising funds or participating in food drives. So I'm starting to learn a lot about these people, and it will help me formulate what might be a good fit for them at the Winona Community Foundation. In addition to that, when I was first introduced to them, and I forgot this, is that they were looking for ways to celebrate their anniversary by doing community service. And so because I had been listening to stories, I was able to say, you know, here's an organization where you can do some good work. Here's an organization that has opportunities, which have been really tight in COVID because there were a lot of places where those volunteer opportunities weren't around. But because I had processed and heard those stories, I was able to share them out. So tell your story, show up. The other thing that as you're listening is you want to start to, particularly when it's individuals, is to hear what their life makeup is. And the reason I say that is that there are some key indicators who's a good gift prospect. Single people are your favorite. You know, why would a single person be your favorite? They don't generally have to worry about family obligations. And as they're older, and if they're single, then they probably have a question about who are their heirs, where are their dollars going? So they're a great opportunity for you to get to know a little bit better. People who have highly successful children are also good people to talk to because they're not concerned about making sure that their kids are taken care of. They might be saying, hey, my kids can take care of themselves. And so they might have some extra resources. People who own businesses. Now, just because someone owns a business does not necessarily mean their business is successful. And so it also means that they have been talked to a lot of people. And so Amanda said, what are those connections that might be beneficial to their business that by partnering with you, by investing in you, might have that collaborative effect. You're hearing more about, oh my goodness, I just said corporate social responsibility, but marketing that is aligned with their mission. So lots of different ways to learn about those businesses and stuff. I'm kind of jumping all over the place because there's lots of little tidbits I like to share. And one of the things that it's going to come down to, and again, Amanda did a great job about this, is that eventually you have to ask for a gift. Okay. And that can be scary. But be ready to take a no. And remember that there are actually 4 no's. And this was something I learned very early in my fundraising career. So how can there be 4 no's? Well, if I ask you for money, you might be saying no, because right now isn't a good time. Right now is not a good time for me because I have to pay taxes really soon. So don't be asking me for money now. So no, not now. You may be asking me for money to, oh my gosh, what's something I can't stand? I don't know, something I don't like. But so the no might be you asked me for the wrong thing. In Amanda's world, she has at Habitat for Humanity a brush with kindness, and she has building a new home. And she might ask me to help build a new home, and I'm going to say no. But if she had asked me about a brush for kindness, I'd be all over that. So no, not that. And then the other no is someone comes and they ask me for an amount that is just not in my wherewithal. So it might be no, not that much. And actually, if it's a no, not that much, you might actually be able to engage in a conversation about what is a good amount for them. And then the last no is the authentic no. But that doesn't mean that you simply wipe them away unless they have very much told you, remove me from your list, never ask me again. It's just another opportunity to start telling your story, sharing the great work that you do, and the opportunities to engage them. So I'm going to pause on that and say that I love talking fundraising. So anyone on this call can call me, and I'd love to talk you through things. But another favorite story of mine is when I was at UW Green Bay, I started their alumni giving campaign. And that included direct mail, as you would think. And we had done our direct mail appeal, and people do still send money, cash, in the mail. And I received this $5 bill that must have been, can you tell I love $5 gifts? But this bill had been through the laundry, the ringer. I mean, it was like that soft cloth $5 bill. And on a little notepad, or, not a full-size piece of paper, was the most trembling handwriting you could have ever imagined. So this was an elderly person who had written this note and said, "I'm so sorry, it can't be more. I hope that this does good." And as Amanda said, where is it coming from? And what is the beauty behind the action of that gift? And that's probably why I like those small gifts so much. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate Brian putting me after Nancy. That's not any fun at all. Thank you. So a lot of wisdom here. I get to follow the wisdom with some tidbits. I think my first experience was don't be afraid to ask for too much. I remember going into my first development director and him saying, ask for $1 million. And I went, oh my, I can't, how do I ever ask for $1 million? And he goes, two things. One, they'll be flattered that you think that they've got $1 million to offer. That makes them smile. Nobody's offended. Nancy, I know you love big brothers and big sisters. You've been a generous supporter over the years. I'd like to ask you for $1 million gift. And it's just that brings that smile like, well, thank you, Jeff, that you think I've got $1 million. I don't. But now we can have to start a conversation about how much you would be willing to support the organization for. I think one of the worst things we can ever have as fundraisers is going home thinking, I didn't ask for enough. You're in front of a donor and you say, I'm looking for $1,000. They go, oh, great, glad to give it to you. And you're like, well, wait a minute, were you gonna give more? Yeah, man, we've all been there where you just go, I didn't ask for enough because they agreed too quickly and they thought they were gonna ask for 2,000 and we got away with 1,000. So by asking for the $1 million is a great place where I love to start. It's a good conversation starter. Two, if you've got donors that are out there, always have a conversation about how they can give more. And these are sometimes one or two conversations like Nancy referred to. Sometimes they're months in the making, but these people are invested in your success. And if they're not saying yes to more donations now, they might say yes later. As long as they know what your mission is and what you're trying to accomplish, they are there to help make sure that you're successful. References for relationships are critical, and going with that are warm introductions. We ask around all the time. There's definitely companies in town that Quick Trip is an easy example. So Quick Trip, yes, here's your online portal, ask for the $500. But we're all trying to find that decision maker in Quick Trip, that decision maker at any one of numerous businesses. And you're not asking for money in the first conversation, but if they're agreeing to see you, they know why you're there. As nonprofit organizations, when you make that call and say, I'm the executive director of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, love to have a conversation. If they've said yes, they know why you're coming. Nobody is surprised while you're there. And you don't want to ask too early. And like Nancy, it's getting a feel for the relationship and knowing when you can go in for the kill. For some of the people that are watching this, you don't have to accept all gifts, especially in the grants process. Some can be extremely expensive. So just be aware what the obligations are and make sure that you can follow through with the requirements of the gift. And that can be an individual donor. Hey, I want you to build this building. I'll give you $1 million for it. And it's like, well, we need two, and this is not possible. I remember years ago with Notre Dame University, you couldn't just offer money to build a building. You had to set up a trust fund, an endowment to pay for the utilities and upkeep of the building. So they realized that all these people were donating buildings, it was costing the university money. So there's some wisdom in that for us, or for us smaller organizations, that we don't take on a financial commitment that stretches beyond our means to fulfill it. Other than that, I'm done. I don't know who's taking over from here because Brian is out there. Are we opening it up to questions?
Can I share my screen?
Oh, please do, Nancy. Yes.
So I'm going to put on here, hopefully you guys can see this. Can you see something called how much did America give in 2018?
Yes.
All right. So there is an organization called the Giving Institute, and every year they conduct a massive deep dive into all kinds of IRS tax returns to reflect on what giving was in that year. And I have a pie chart that I absolutely love, but I couldn't find it. So this is the best that I can do. But what I like to look at is that circle that is in the right here. And what it's doing is where did the generosity come from? And what you're seeing right here is in 2018, 68% of charitable contributions come from individuals. Now, pop over here to this giving by bequest at 9%. Those are individuals as well. So now your individuals are up to 77%. Giving by foundations. Now, there are corporate foundations, but an organization like the Winona Community Foundation, much of our granting is coming from donor advised funds that are held by individuals. And the reason I like to always show this chart is because a lot of times your board will say, can't we get a grant for that? Let's get a grant. Can we write a grant? Well, the reality is grants take a long time. You also have to cultivate your grantors like you would an individual or a couple. And as Jeff said, sometimes they come with a lot of attachments that are actually more costly than and have some extra hoops you need to jump through than what you have the resources for. And they do generally take time. For example, the Winona Community Foundation, we have just completed a cycle. Our grant applicants submitted and they were due on March 1. And we're going to have results this month at the end of the month. But that is probably one of the fastest grant cycles that are out there. But if you missed our cycle, the next time you can apply for a grant is due August 1. So it won't be until September that grants will be available. So if you're trying to get immediate cash, because some of you are in smaller organizations that need those dollars to keep your doors open, grants are not going to be your savior. So that's why I like this particular document. And I can share that if you just Google Giving USA, you can find some free resources out there that give you this kind of information. So I just wanted to share that.
Nancy, you made the great comment earlier that when you're ready to start meeting people and preparing yourself for fundraising, you have to get out there. And if you're not used to going to the Chamber of Commerce network nights, or if you're not used to going to, different community events where people you don't necessarily know are there, it's great to go on the buddy system. So if there is someone on your board that you can go with, or someone who has a real passion for what you're trying to do, invite that person to go with you with the shared understanding that you want to try and meet as many people as you can in teamwork. Sometimes when you've got someone standing there with you, it makes it a whole lot easier to try that new thing the first time. And Nancy, as you shared that you love to educate people about fundraising, I really like to be people's wing person. So if you ever want to go out and try and meet new people in a new room, I'm always happy to make invitations or introductions, and walk people around. So I'm sure that Brian will be sharing contact information. But if there's not someone who feels like a natural fit to go with you into a new space and try and meet new members of the community, I'm always up for, being that wing person. We can spend 5 minutes together, figure out what it is you hope to do, and then go out there and see what we can do. So call me up, send me an email, and just count me on your team.
Like I said, I like to talk, so talk fundraising. One of the other opportunities that you have, particularly if you have a new initiative, be that you're at a longstanding organization, but you have a new initiative, or you're brand new and fledgling fundraising effort, ask for advice. Don't ask for money. Ask for advice. Hey, we're looking at doing this new project. We're looking at retooling X. What do you think? Do you have any advice? Because people who give advice start to feel invested, and the dollars will follow. So keep that in mind. If you've got a reason to ask for advice, and all of us have reasons to ask for advice, if you're trying to get that first conversation going, or you're trying to get a long-standing donor to maybe invest more in a project, that's a great way to do it.
Something that I used to do frequently when I worked at, and it's hard to do now because of COVID, but when I worked at our nonprofit in Rochester, was a lot of the donors we'd bring in to show them what we're doing and meet the individuals that they were supporting. It was a disability services organization. So it was great to show them, like, this is what your money went for when you attended this event, and show, we would give them tours of the facility and show them what projects we needed to work on in coming years. So we were already building that engagement and kind of for preparing them for what we may need in the future. And I found that to be very beneficial.
Brian, excuse me, Jeff, you're brand new to the community. You've been in the area just a few months. And do you have any reflection on how to get those first visits or introductions going?
Well, similar to Stacy, is that it came in and we don't have a real organized database, and it hasn't been kept up to date. So it's identifying those highest donors first, reaching out to them, asking them why they're supporting, thanking them for their long-term support, and then start moving through the lower and lower donors. I think it's so much easier than when people have a history of giving at all to reach back out and takes time, takes trust, and longer, as we all know, people, the longer you are in an organization, the easier it is to do this.
Carrie asks a question in the chat, if any of us have experience with crowdsource platforms like Kickstarter or GoFundMe. I have used I don't know, actually, gosh, I don't know what platform it is, but every year I ride the Habitat 500 bike ride, and that is a crowdsource opportunity where we start a team. So here, just because we were feeling silly, we named our local team the Winona Riders. And then all of us who are riding solicit our friends and networks, and we make use of social media and email newsletters. We use them, we send press releases to the paper and do our best to get in the media. And so in my experience with CrowdRise fundraising, and and I'll throw this to all of you too, it's not so much about the platform, but about how you market the campaign and the message that you're trying to get out there. A great example is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. People went crazy for that CrowdRise campaign because it was so funny. And, people love to have a good time. So more than what platform are you going to use, how are you going to gain attention? And so I think that that's what really makes the the CrowdRise model successful. Sometimes people use really emotional stories. You know, you see those platforms really being successful with health emergencies or other kinds of personal emergencies. And then you see them being successful with innovative new ideas where there aren't necessarily already existing pockets of money. And so then they're really speaking to people who love innovation. But at the end of the day, I think the key to a good CrowdRise campaign is to make sure that everybody knows about it and everybody loves it and it's got a lot of visibility. So social networks are really important. Not only are you talking about it, but everybody who knows you gets excited, you know, takes the hook and then pushes it out. And then their friends and their networks all take the hook and then they push it out. And so think of it as a mass market campaign that really needs broad-based crowd appeal. And so that's what I would advocate is when you plan to do one of those campaigns, how can you make sure that what you've got is really eye-catching and will capture people's attention, even if they have no idea who you are because they're getting it fifth, sixth, 100th hand that it caught on. But do others of you have other experience with crowdsourced fundraising that you would maybe want to expand on that? It turns out that we're all old school fundraisers and crowdsourced fundraising is new and we're old.
Well, I think too, some of it has to do with the regions that we serve, and that, doing a crowdsourcing from a community foundation is probably not going to generate a lot of return on the investment that it would take. But what I do think is important is that, Carrie, in terms of opportunities to give, you do want to give your potential donors all kinds of different ways that they can support you. And so an example obviously is you want to be able to take credit cards. You want to be able to make a gift online. You want to be able to take a check, and you want to be able to be timely with it. So when you are creating your appeals, even if you're doing a direct mail appeal, give your donor the opportunity to go online and make that gift. And even though collecting credit card numbers is not necessarily the best decision for security reasons, you should still allow your donors to write out their credit card number, because there are still people out there that will do that. The other is when you go online, make sure that it's really easy to find that donate page. I highly recommend having a donate button on that front page so that they don't have to go looking for it. So multi ways of giving. I know that there are some people that do a lot on Facebook, and I don't know what the other individuals' experiences with Facebook, but it is my understanding that the lag time between when somebody makes a donation and when you actually receive those dollars can be significant, because they have payout requirements so that they won't pay you out until you hit a certain dollar amount. And so if you're looking at how are we paying bills and things like that, you might want to offer it, but not depend on it, because you don't know when those dollars are going to come in.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to note and to know with the CrowdRise platforms is that they can be handy because a lot of times they're low cost. So you can start a campaign without having to pay, a monthly membership or something like that. But you'll often find that there are higher credit card processing fees, so you won't get the full amount of the gift. An example would be the GiveMN. GiveMN charges, I think, 6.9% on a credit card transaction, and it may have even gone up. And that's because of all the work that it takes to be GiveMN, and all that they do to really advance a statewide giving campaign. But if that's what you're using for your credit card gifts all year round, you're going to be paying a significant bit. And, they'll say, well, you can ask the donor to cover those costs because they have a button that you can click on the giving form. And that essentially just increases the amount that the donor gave by 6.9%. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a button that says, would you like to just give 10% more? It would only be an extra $5, and then you could get that. So one thing to be cautious with when you're looking at those platforms is how much money are they going to take? And it's not always crystal clear. So you really got to do your research with those. I think a lot of nonprofits like to use PayPal gift processing because it's a lower cost, but it doesn't have that same eye-catching user friendliness that you're used to seeing with some of those splashier ones. And so when you come across that PayPal give button, it can look a little bit low budget, which can cause people to shy away. So it's really important when you're looking at those platforms to think, what are the optics here? How does this reflect my organization? And what kind of fees am I either passing on to the donor or losing from the gift? So if you're researching CrowdRise platforms, and I realize as I say it that CrowdRise is probably a specific one, but anyways, I'm not endorsing it. If you're researching those platforms, make sure you look at all the fine print so that you know what you're committing to and how they stack up, as there are more and more each year.
To reiterate what Amanda says is to be consistent. Find one you like, use it, live it, move on. It's like trying to do social media. You can hit the next new thing and think this is it, and then you're spending days and days trying to keep track of this stuff and who owes you and when, and you can't even get your thank you letters out anymore.
We maybe didn't talk too much about stewardship, but I'm really glad you said thank you letters. And there's one researcher, one fundraising researcher that I like to follow. His name is Tom Ahern, and he gives a lot of guidance on how to write compelling appeal letters and also how to thank people. He also has done a lot of work on how to write newsletters that raise money. And one of his big tips is to say you, like YOU literally, or address the donor twice as many times as you say I, us, or we, to truly be donor-centric in a quantifiable way. So when you're writing, does the donor really feel like the centerpiece of what you're telling them, or are you really just sharing your glory and hoping they'll ride along on your coattails? And it's less successful to make yourself the star of the show. If I went out there and just bragged Habitat for Humanity up and down, people would think, wow, Habitat's doing an awesome job, and they give me the thumbs up, but they wouldn't see themselves as a key piece of that. So when I can share the story that we have a construction staff of one, and you, the community, provide the volunteer workforce that builds and repairs our community, you, the community, are the hero of the story, and that's the truth. So how can you make it everything that you write really about the donor as the solver of the problem, for which the agency is just the conduit? The agency is here to help you, the donor, with your good intent, build it for affordable housing, take the steps as efficiently as possible towards helping your community. And that's just the bit about making the donor the hero, but I started with the idea of saying thank you. And Nancy, you talked about the importance of the thank you call with the woman who gave you that sweet $5 gift, and then in the end really wanted to make Winona Health a part of her life's legacy. And that started with a thank you call, and then it started with an interview that made her feel special. Those thank you calls after a gift, no matter the size, really do, or they really can mean the world to the people who pick up the phone. And similarly, the way I mentioned trying to walk right through your letter into the reader's living room, you kind of want to do that in your thank you letter too, and help them really fully see what it is that they're making possible with their gift, so that they feel a part of the mission and really like they want to continue to be a part of it. So all of the ways you can think of to say thank you are worth doing.
The other side of stewardship is the regulatory side of stewardship. So if you're soliciting funds, first of all, you want to make sure that you are a 501c3 public charity, or you are fiscally sponsored by a 501c3 public charity. That's the threshold that the IRS looks at you being able to deduct a gift. So if I wrote a check out to Stacy, who is going to give dogs baths for free, and I love that she's doing that, and so I give her money, she cannot issue me a receipt. Even though it's charitable, the IRS doesn't look at it that way. So you want to make sure that happens. There's all kinds of little ins and outs of providing receipts that actually, when it gets down to it, there are very few times where you as the charity are required to provide the receipt. That sounds kind of wonky. It's actually the donor who's obligated to secure the documentation. But I love my donors and I'm not going to make them work for it. I'm going to receipt every dollar I get. And in that receipt, there's specific language that needs to be in there. And it says, your donor received no goods or services in exchange for this contribution. And that allows that donor to potentially deduct the full amount of the gift. If you don't do that and your donor gets audited and they don't have that little sentence, the IRS is going to say, oh, too bad, not deductible. So make sure you're familiar with that. And I don't know if when you get the recording, you can see all of this, but I have two favorite IRS publications, and it's IRS publication 1771, and I'm typing this in the chat, and 526. Those are two documents I refer to frequently that educate you or your donor as to when gifts are actually deductible. Yeah, it's the sexy part of fundraising, but it's an important part of fundraising.
Nancy, it's my favorite that you have favorite IRS documents and can recall them by their numbers. That makes my day.
It's sad, I know.
Are there any other hot topics you guys feel like we should be sure to briefly address, or do any of you who are here have any additional questions you'd like us to try and speak to? You can tell we're a panel of fundraisers because did you see how we all just sat there silently? This is one thing we maybe just have to say. When you ask someone for money, don't say anything else. It's like if we were talking with your kids and you say, honey, I want you to go clean your room. Or you can just do part of it. Or if that's really too much for you to manage right now, just go read a book or watch some TV. And all of a sudden your kid is not cleaning their room. So you really just say, honey, I want you to go clean your room. And then you wait and they go do it. And it's the same in fundraising. You ask for your gift, I would like you to consider a gift today of $25,000. And then you sit and you wait. And it's really important to let the person who you've asked have time to ruminate on that, because they're going to think about all of the things that you maybe haven't considered or that they can only know. And also, I've heard this in sales and I really hate the phrase, but it's the first one who talks loses. So just wait until you get your answer and don't talk them out of it by accidentally reducing what you've just put so much information into putting forward. That's my last nugget.
I will just add, and Jeff said this, that, starting fundraising, it's always slow, but don't give up. Like there can be moments where you get, 5 no's in a week and you think, what did I do wrong or what's happening? But that happens. You just got to keep trying and trying because it is a slow process. I'm going through it and I've done fundraising at my nonprofit before I came to Hiawatha. And there are days where you get exhausted, but it all pays off in the end. You just got to keep pushing forward and things will turn your way eventually. It does take work.
And don't forget the first 3 letters in fundraising are FUN.
If I could just get my board to think that way, I'd be a lot better off.
I think on that high note, we have probably covered it and should bid this wonderful opportunity a good night and hope that everyone who is here this evening gained something from it and that everyone who has an opportunity to see it later on feels like they know a little more than they started. And I think you can count on any of us to be available outside of this panel to answer any questions that may come up as you think about it, or if you just prefer a quieter room for questioning. Good night, everyone.